Okay, so picture this. You're hanging off a cliff in the Dolomites, right? Heart-pounding, amazing view, but then, disaster strikes. You twist an ankle and maybe break something. And that's where this deep dive comes in. You know you're planning some pretty epic adventures, and you've sent us a bunch of articles all about travel insurance for adventure sports. And we're going to break it all down for you. Like why your standard travel insurance could leave you hanging, literally, and what you need to look for to get the right coverage.
Yeah, it's definitely a smart move to think about this stuff in advance. You're right. Standard travel insurance is great for your everyday travel hiccups, like delayed flights, lost luggage, maybe a twisted ankle from sightseeing. But when we're talking adventure sports, the risks and the potential costs, they're just on a whole other level.
Exactly. So let's get into it. Why isn't that regular travel insurance enough when we're talking about, say, backcountry skiing or a hardcore scuba diving trip?
Well, imagine you're skiing off Batiste and you trigger an avalanche. Scary situation. Right, you need immediate medical attention, you need a helicopter evacuation. That could easily rack up tens of thousands of dollars in costs, and most standard policies just won't cover those kinds of high-risk activities.
So it's not even just about the medical bills, but the rescue operations in these remote places.
Yeah, exactly. Standard travel insurance is designed for more predictable situations. It's like bringing a butter knife to a gunfight.
Okay, I like that visual. So say I'm convinced regular travel insurance is out.
Right.
What is the solution then?
Specialized adventure sports insurance. Think of it as your custom-designed safety net.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Tell me more. What does this superhero insurance actually cover?
Well, let's start with the big one. Emergency medical treatment. We're talking hospital stays, surgery, doctor's visits, prescriptions, the whole works. It's your financial shield if an accident happens. And remember, this is internationally. It's not just about being covered at home, but anywhere your adventure takes you.
So if I have a nasty fall while I'm climbing in Thailand,
you're covered. And it's not just the immediate medical costs either. It could cover things like getting you back home for, further treatment if needed. We're talking potentially life-changing costs here. There are documented cases where people have faced, hundreds of thousands of dollars in bills after accidents abroad. And without specialized insurance, that burden falls squarely on you.
That's definitely food for thought. What about those dramatic rescue situations we talked about earlier?
Right. Well, that's where emergency evacuation coverage comes in. Think, helicopter rides off mountains, being airlifted from a jungle, or transported by boat from a remote island. These evacuations can cost a small fortune. But with the right insurance, you're covered.
Okay, starting to feel a lot safer already.
Yeah.
Anything else included in this safety net?
Absolutely. There's search and rescue coverage, which kicks in if you get lost or injured in the wilderness. Imagine you're on a solo trek and you take a wrong turn. You end up disoriented and injured. This coverage helps get search teams out there to find you and bring you back to safety.
That's incredible peace of mind, especially if you're venturing off the beaten path. What if something happens even before the adventure begins?
Right, well, that's where trip cancellation and interruption coverage comes in. Let's say you break your leg a week before your big ski trip. Specialized insurance can reimburse you for non-refundable expenses, like, flights and accommodation. And if you have to cut your adventure short due to, illness or injury, it can help cover those costs too.
So it's not just about the during, but the before and even the after of the trip.
Exactly. It's about having that comprehensive safety net so you can focus on enjoying your adventure, knowing you're protected.
This is starting to sound less like insurance and more like having a guardian angel watching over you.
Yeah, it's pretty comprehensive, that's for sure. But there's one more piece of the puzzle. Personal liability.
Now I consider myself a pretty responsible adventurer. Why would I need that?
Well, even the most experienced adventurers can have accidents, with unintended consequences. Say you're mountain biking and you accidentally collide with another biker, causing a serious injury. Or imagine you're kayaking and you damage someone's property.
So it's about protecting myself if I accidentally cause harm to others or their belongings.
Precisely. Personal liability coverage can help with legal fees and potential compensation claims. Especially, in a foreign country where legal systems might be different, this coverage can be invaluable.
Okay, you've convinced me specialized adventure sports insurance is definitely a must-have. But with all these different coverage options, how do I actually choose the right policy for me?
Well, that's the million-dollar question. And it's what we'll dive into next.
All right, let's get into the nitty-gritty of choosing the perfect adventure sports insurance policy. All right, we're back and ready to tackle the how-to of choosing the right adventure sports insurance policy. Where do we even begin with all this?
Well, it all starts with being really clear about what you're planning to do. Think of it like, planning your itinerary, but for your insurance.
Okay, I like that analogy.
Yeah.
What's step one on this insurance itinerary?
First, you got to identify your activities. And I mean, be super specific. Don't just write down, skiing. Are you hitting the groomed slopes, or are we talking backcountry skiing, heli skiing, ski mountaineering? Those are all different beasts with different risk levels.
Right. A leisurely day on the bunny slopes is not quite the same as navigating glaciers and avalanche terrain.
Exactly. And the same goes for other activities. Scuba diving. Are you exploring coral reefs, or are you going for, deep wreck dives? Climbing, are we talking indoor gym climbing or scaling El Capitan? Each adventure has its own set of risks.
So I need to make sure the policy explicitly lists those specific activities, right? No vague general sports activities language.
You got it. Read that fine print carefully. Otherwise, you might think you're covered, only to find out later that your specific activity was excluded, and you're on the hook for those costs.
Okay, lesson learned, be specific. What's next on our insurance checklist?
Next up, compare coverage limits. Don't just go for the cheapest option without really looking at what it offers. A policy with a low premium might sound tempting, but if the coverage limits are low, it could leave you with a huge financial burden if something serious happens.
So don't be penny wise and pound foolish when it comes to adventure sports insurance.
Precisely. It's about finding that balance between cost and coverage. Look at things like the maximum payout for medical expenses, emergency evacuation, and any other coverage areas that are important to you. Think about, worst case scenarios and make sure the policy can handle them.
Can you give us some real world examples of what those costs might look like?
Absolutely. Let's say you need to be airlifted off a mountain after a skiing accident. That could easily cost, upwards of $10,000. And in some remote locations, even more. A complicated surgery and extended hospital stay in a foreign country. You could be looking at bills in the, tens or even hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Okay, wow. That's definitely eye-opening. So higher coverage limits are worth the extra investment. What else should I be looking for?
This is a big one. Pay attention to exclusions. Insurance policies are notorious for their fine print. And it's crucial to be aware of, any sneaky exclusions that might catch you off guard.
What kind of exclusions should I be on the lookout for?
Well, some policies might exclude certain high-risk activities altogether, or they might have a separate list of activities that require an additional premium to be covered. For example, a policy might cover scuba diving, but only to a certain depth. If you're planning on going deeper, you might need to pay extra for that coverage.
So even if a policy says it covers my activity, I need to check if there are any restrictions or limitations.
Exactly. And be aware of pre-existing condition clauses. If you have a medical condition, make sure it won't affect your coverage for the activities you're planning. Some policies might exclude coverage for injuries related to pre-existing conditions.
Okay, sounds like I need to put on my detective hat and do some serious fine print analysis. What else is important to consider?
Think about your destination. The risks of skiing in the Alps are different from skiing in the Rockies. Some policies might have region-specific coverage or exclusions.
So a policy that's perfect for a surfing trip in Bali might not be the best choice for an ice climbing adventure in Iceland.
Exactly. You need to consider the unique challenges and potential hazards of your destination. Do some research on the specific risks associated with the location and see if any policies offer enhanced coverage for that region.
All right, destination check. What about those extra coverage perks you mentioned earlier?
Well, if you're traveling with expensive gear, like ski equipment climbing gear or a high-end mountain bike, consider adding gear protection. It's worth the peace of mind knowing you're covered if your equipment gets lost, damaged, or stolen. And if you're traveling to a place with, unpredictable weather, think about travel delay coverage. It can help with those unexpected expenses if your flight gets canceled or your trip is interrupted due to weather.
That makes a lot of sense. So we've covered the why, the what, and now the how of choosing adventure sports insurance. What's the key takeaway message for our listeners?
It boils down to this. Don't just assume your standard travel insurance is enough when you're planning an adventure. Take the time to research and choose a specialized policy that fits your specific needs and activities. Read the fine print carefully, be aware of exclusions, and compare coverage limits.
So informed choices lead to thrilling adventures.
Exactly. But remember, insurance is just one piece of the puzzle.
Okay, so before we wrap up this deep dive, let's switch gears and talk about staying safe out there. Because even the best insurance policy can't prevent accidents.
Absolutely. Because staying safe should always be the top priority.
All right, we're back for the final leg of our deep dive into adventure sports insurance.
Hopefully by now you're feeling, empowered to plan that next big adventure.
Absolutely. We've talked about why it's crucial, what it covers, and how to choose the right policy. But before we wrap things up, let's shift gears and talk about safety.
Yeah, because even with the best insurance in the world, preventing accidents should always be, the top priority.
Exactly. So let's dive into some practical safety tips for all our adventure-seeking listeners. What are some of the golden rules for staying safe out there?
Well, rule number one, follow the rules. It might sound obvious, but it's amazing how often people get into trouble by ignoring safety guidelines.
So no trying to conquer that mountain on my own, no matter how tempting it might be.
Exactly. Always listen to your guides, instructors, or local authorities. They know the area, they understand the risks, and they're there to help you have a safe and enjoyable experience.
Okay, safety guidelines check. What else should we be mindful of?
Be honest with yourself about your skill level. Don't try to tackle double black diamond ski run if you're a beginner. And don't attempt that challenging rock climb without mastering the basics. Pushing yourself too hard or venturing beyond your capabilities is a recipe for disaster.
So choose activities that match your experience and gradually work your way up to those bigger challenges.
Precisely. There's no shame in starting small and building your skills. And while you're out there, don't forget to keep a close eye on the weather. Mother Nature can be unpredictable, especially in, adventure environments.
Because a sudden storm can turn a fun day of hiking into a pretty dangerous situation.
Exactly. Always check the weather forecast before you head out. And be prepared to adjust your plans if conditions change. A little flexibility can go a long way in keeping you safe.
Weather awareness check. What else should we add to our safety checklist?
Whenever possible, travel with a buddy or as part of a group. Having someone with you can be a lifesaver in case of an emergency. And it's always more fun to share those epic adventures with a friend.
Plus, they can help take those awesome photos for Instagram.
Exactly. And lastly, listen to your body. Know your limits and don't push yourself to the point of, exhaustion or discomfort. If you're feeling tired, dehydrated, or just a bit off, it's okay to take a break or even call it a day.
So no shame in admitting when you need to rest and recharge.
Absolutely. Fatigue and dehydration can impair your judgment and increase the risk of accidents. It's always better to err on the side of caution. And live to adventure another day.
Wise words. So we've covered the why, the what, the how, and now the how to stay safe of adventure sports insurance. It's been quite a journey. What's the final takeaway message for our listeners as they plan their next great adventure?
Adventure sports are incredible. They push us beyond our limits, they connect us with nature, and they create memories that last a lifetime. But it's crucial to approach these activities with both enthusiasm and a healthy dose of respect for the risks involved. By choosing the right insurance and prioritizing safety, you can embrace those thrills knowing you're prepared for whatever comes your way.
I love that, prepared for the thrills and the spills. So as you go out there and conquer those mountains, explore those oceans, or soar through those skies, remember to do it with preparation, responsibility, and that adventurous spirit that brought you here in the first place.
And don't forget that insurance policy. It's your trusty sidekick on this incredible journey we call life.
Well said. Until next time, happy adventuring, everyone.